There's a moment in episode 4 where Alf walks back into his old tavern, and for probably the first time in his life, everybody in that room knows exactly who he is. He's no longer just a loud drunk claiming royal blood. He's now the man who rides Silverwing. And he finally has the respect, attention, and the status he's always wanted. And almost immediately, that recognition starts closing around him. And it's because the crown expects service. The queen expects discipline, and his dragon makes him famous, sure, but it also makes him useful. And once the crown decides that you are useful, your life, in a way, stops belonging entirely to you. That idea kept following me throughout this episode. Because, for example, Rhaena is now finally seen as a dragon rider. Alyn is finally acknowledged by his dad, and he's now trusted with more responsibilities. And Mysaria is no longer merely a whisper in the shadows, and even Rhaenyra herself has finally received the public recognition she spent her entire life fighting for. She now sits the Iron Throne. But the episode does not treat recognition as a happy ending. It almost treats it like a contract, because once the world recognizes you as something, it begins demanding that you become it. And that's what I want to talk about in this video today. Not every plot in episode 4, not a scene-by-scene recap, and not about future episodes, but about the characters in this episode who discover that being seen comes with a price. The clearest example is Rhaena, because Sheepstealer is not simply a dragon to her, he is proof. Rhaena has spent most of her life inside a family where dragons are treated almost like physical evidence of belonging. Her sister has a dragon, her father has one, her cousins and half-brothers have them. So, in a house that constantly confuses blood with destiny, Rhaena is a daughter who appears to at least herself to have inherited the blood without the destiny. So when she claims Sheepstealer, she's not only gaining power, she is rewriting how everybody sees her, including how she sees herself. And I understand why that would be intoxicating. The episode does not need Rhaena to explain it in a speech. I mean, look at the way she refuses Daemon's offer to return. She knows what waits for her if she goes back. Judgment, blame, and once again, being defined by someone else. But with Sheepstealer, she has finally found an identity that no parent, queen, or council can grant or revoke. But this is where the episode, I feel, gets uncomfortable, because the recognition that Rhaena gains is tangled up with an enormous cost. Jace died after she brought an uncontrollable wild dragon into the Battle of the Gullet, and the show makes her live with that, and I honestly really appreciate that it does not allow claiming a dragon to become a simple empowerment moment, because Rhaena got the thing she believed would complete her, and it immediately revealed to us how little control she actually had over it. Then Daemon arrives, and this was probably my favorite part of the episode because it shows us a version of him that we almost never get to see. Frightened, and not frightened of an army, not frightened of another dragon, but frightened for his daughter. For once, Daemon is not looking at Rhaena as a child who disappointed him by failing to claim a dragon. He sees the danger she's in, and he recognizes her fear before he recognizes her usefulness. And that recognition matters. But even Daemon's love comes in the only language he seems fully fluent in: violence and deception. He kills an innocent shepherd, burns the evidence, and lies to Rhaenyra so that Rhaena can keep the identity she fought for. Rhaena is finally recognized by her father, but someone else pays for it. Daemon finally acts like a protective parent, but he does it by becoming a worse husband and a worse man. And I think it would be easy to look at this scene and simply say Daemon chose his daughter, and he did. And I found that genuinely moving, but what stayed with me wasn't the choice itself, it was the price of that choice. Rhaena finally becomes the dragon rider she's always wanted to be, but that recognition doesn't arrive cleanly. And I'm not saying Jace's death is her fault. That responsibility ultimately belongs to those who killed him. But I also don't think that we can pretend that her decision played no part in what happened. At the very least, Jace becomes collateral in the pursuit of the identity she's spent her whole life searching for. And the cost doesn't even stop there. Daemon lies to Rhaenyra, murders an innocent shepherd, and leaves someone else to pay the price so Rhaena can hold on to the identity she finally found. Her identity is real, but so are the consequences required to protect it. Corlys and Alyn give us a different kind of recognition. Not the recognition of identity, but the recognition of legitimacy. And this distinction matters. Corlys is not refusing to accept Alyn as his son. He has accepted him, he calls him his son, and he asks the crown to legitimize him. The tension here is not that Corlys is emotionally withholding recognition, it is that his recognition, powerful as he is, still cannot legally create Alyn Velaryon. Only the crown can do that. And that's because personal recognition is not institutional recognition. And that is one of the most revealing things about this world. The truth is already known. Corlys knows who Alyn is, Alyn knows, Rhaenyra knows, and Alyn is competent enough to occupy Corlys' seat on the small council, and the crown is perfectly willing to use his judgment and labor. But truth does not automatically become legitimacy. You have to be pronounced legitimate by someone with enough authority. And this is where I think Rhaenyra's hesitation becomes personally insulting to Corlys, because Corlys spent years publicly recognizing Rhaenyra's sons as Velaryons. Whatever he privately understood about their parentage, he defended their name, their inheritance, and their place in his family. His house absorbed the political consequences of that recognition. Now Corlys asks Rhaenyra to return the favor for his actual sons, but the crown hesitates. But I do understand why Rhaenyra hesitates. Legitimizing Adam and Alyn could reopen questions about her own sons and remind everyone that legitimacy in this family has always been politically manufactured. But that is precisely why the conflict works. Rhaenyra's legitimacy once depended on Corlys agreeing to recognize something that protected her. And now Alyn's legitimacy depends on Rhaenyra agreeing to recognize something that protects him. The cost of Alyn's recognition is dependence. His father can give him love, responsibility, and a seat at the table, but the name itself remains subject to royal approval. And Corlys isn't spared either. For all the power he holds, he still can't give his own sons the one thing they need the most. That decision belongs to the crown. So Alyn taking Corlys' council seat is therefore both a victory and an incomplete one. He's treated as capable before he's treated as legitimate. The crown recognizes his usefulness more easily than it recognizes his identity, and that's a pattern that this episode keeps returning to. That institutions are often happy to recognize what you can provide before they can recognize who you are. That brings us to Rhaenyra, who has finally received the largest recognition anyone in this story can receive. She has been crowned, acclaimed, and seated on the Iron Throne, and episode 4 immediately asks the most inconvenient question possible: now what? Recognition of authority is not permanent. It has to be renewed every day through decisions, appearances, appointments, punishments, and results. Rhaenyra spent years arguing that she was the rightful queen. Now she is learning that being right and being effective are not the same skill. The Queen of Bastards graffiti is a perfect example. The words threaten her because they do not merely insult her, they challenge the story holding her rule together. And her response was sending the Gold Cloaks to terrorize the city in search of whoever wrote it. It just shows how quickly the need to preserve recognition can sometimes almost become coercive. And this is where my opinion of Rhaenyra in this episode gets complicated, because I understand the insecurity. Her entire life has taught her that one rumor about blood, sex, or legitimacy can become a political weapon. But the crackdown is still a terrible response, because she tries to force the city to acknowledge her authority, and in doing so risks giving a city a reason to resent it. Even though recognition has made Rhaenyra queen, it has also taken away the freedom to react like a private person, because now every wound becomes policy, every insecurity can become somebody else's punishment. Mysaria's story is quieter, but it fits this idea in a way that I find really interesting. Because for most of the series, Mysaria survived by being underestimated. She operated in the shadows, traded information, and remained useful precisely because powerful people did not fully see her. But now Rhaenyra does see her. She listens to her and she trusts her instincts. And Mysaria is not merely a source anymore. She's becoming part of the Queen's inner political life. And that is recognition of value. And it gives Mysaria influence she once had to steal from the margins. But at the same time, it also changes what is expected from her. She cannot simply pass that information and disappear. She now carries responsibility for what Rhaenyra does with that information. Her access ties her to the successes and failures of the regime. The closing exchange around Daemon's supposed proof is important for that reason. Mysaria is suspicious, and she notices the lie before Rhaenyra appears willing to confront it. So the Queen's recognition has placed Mysaria in a position where seeing clearly is no longer enough. She may have to eventually decide what loyalty requires her to do with what she sees. And there's another cost here, and that is that recognition creates rivalry. Daemon clearly understands that Mysaria now has Rhaenyra's ear in a way he no longer fully does, and the more Rhaenyra recognizes Mysaria's political value, the more threatening Mysaria becomes to the old structure of the marriage. So Mysaria gains a voice, but a recognized voice is also a visible target. Ulf may be the most straightforward example of the episode's argument because he openly enjoys being recognized. He returns to the tavern and gets the fantasy he has probably carried for years. His stories are no longer treated like drunken nonsense, and his friends know he really does ride a dragon. So, in a way, he has crossed that invisible line between the ordinary people who watch history happen and the rare people who can change it. And I can't even blame him for enjoying that. Ulf has spent most of his life without rank, wealth, or serious respect, and now suddenly, people look at him differently. However, Ulf seems to believe recognition should function mainly as privilege, so he asks the Queen for favors for his friends, and it's almost like he wants the rewards of status to flow backwards into the life he already had. But of course, Rhaenyra sees it differently. To her, recognizing Ulf as a dragon rider means he now has duties. He is now an extension to the crown, and he cannot move through the city as though Silverwing has changed nothing. He is now a military asset, and the crown begins treating him like one. And I wouldn't say that the episode shows that Ulf has literally lost all free will, but it does show the beginning of a trait that he may not fully understand yet. Because he wanted to be recognized thinking that recognition would expand his life. Instead, it did the opposite. Because now Ulf's movements matter, his behavior matters, his friendships become politically relevant even. His dragon means that the crown can demand service from him on a scale that no ordinary knight could refuse. Recognition gives Ulf his status, but it also transforms him from a person into a resource. And knowing where this story eventually goes, that matters. And I feel like the show is building resentment in a way that is more specific than simple greed. Because Ulf is learning that being elevated by the crown does not necessarily mean being treated as an equal by it. We normally imagine recognition as the reward at the end of a journey. You prove yourself, somebody finally sees you, and the story resolves. But episode 4 treats recognition as the beginning of a new problem. Once you are recognized, the world does not simply applaud, it assigns you a role. We also learn that recognition is not freedom, it is a new set of expectations. And whether those expectations feel like purpose or imprisonment depends on who gets to define the role. As an episode, I do think this is slower and more fragmented than the previous few. It is clearly moving pieces toward larger events, and some storylines feel more like preparation than payoff, but I don't think that makes it empty at all. The episode is strongest when it lets character relationships carry the tension instead of trying to manufacture spectacle. And also, one more thing I wanted to go over is Daeron, and the whole Daeron and Ormond material is probably the episode's most immediately dramatic storyline, and I feel like it deserves its own discussion about indoctrination and the way Ormond uses violence to shape a boy into his preferred kind of ruler. And I'm not ignoring it because it's unimportant, it just simply belongs to its own video and its own discussion. But for me, episode 4 works less as a complete dramatic unit and more as a collection of morally loaded transitions. People are getting what they wanted: dragons, titles, access, authority. And discovering that achievement does not end the conflict, it changes what the conflict demands from them. And that is why I came away liking the episode more the longer I thought about it. It is not the most exciting hour of the season, but it is interested in the consequences, and consequences are where these characters become interesting, in my opinion. And that is it for today. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing. I plan on covering every episode this season, and I'd love to have you along for the ride. And let me know down in the comments below what idea or theme stood out to you the most in episode 4. But thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.